Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of ProDJ Live. Hope you've missed me. Been away for a couple of weeks. You had Diogo filling in for me, and yeah, that was a very interesting one as well. I had the opportunity to watch it back. If you haven't yet, very interesting thoughts on making music with the help of AI. Today we might get a little bit into that as well, since today's topic is done or not, and the main idea behind this topic is trying to look at a few things that we can do to know essentially when a track is finished. We're talking about the last sort of polishing on our track, and this relates to all manner of things related to music production, and that includes reassessing our arrangement, so how the beat is like, if there's anything that we still want to tweak, mixing decisions, not just volumes, not just the general balance, but things that we can do in order to improve our tonal balance, the dynamics of the mix, automation, any special bells and whistles that we might want to add to our track. So just very little things, and then obviously moving on to mastering as well. So the last stage where we're going to just again improve ever so slightly the quality of our finished product, and then have it release ready to fire and to export to streaming platforms, right? Which is the medium that we are working towards in nowadays music. So what I brought for today is a track that actually I started cooking up a few months ago as the jingle for ProDJ Live, and that eventually I fleshed out into a full track, and I haven't looked at it for months. And I'm going to start with that, just this concept of taking a break from your production. Sometimes that just could be a couple of hours when you're working on a session, and that could be like after working for like 2-3 hours or even more. Sometimes, we do get carried away when making music, so it's good to know when to stop, take a break, because your thoughts just become subjective after a while. You can't really look at your project, or better yet, listen to it with with objective, with an objective point of view. So it's good to take a break. Sometimes, working on something else, or just doing something else with your life, doing something in terms of leisure, a little bit of fun, going back, and then you come back with some refreshed ideas. And in this case, this is something that I've left, untouched for, I guess, good like 3 or 4 months. And sometimes this is actually also very good, because when you're in the zone, sometimes you're being very creative and you just want to finish it. But I think that specifically knowing what to do to wrap up a production, sometimes it's better to be done with fresh ears after a good while. So I haven't looked at this in a very long time, so I'm hoping that is going to give me a bit more clarity when reassessing what needs to be done. It's pretty much there. I know that the structure is there, the sound is there, all my main parts, my main ingredients, my main elements are there. I just possibly can come up with a few ideas, so let's see what that means. In the meantime, not sure if there's anyone in the chat room already. Let me just have a check here. Hopefully, if you guys, whenever you guys come into this, just let me know if everything is good as far as sound and video are concerned. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into Ableton and have a listen to what I have to share with you guys today. So this is my project, again, very familiar to me. There are a few things that I immediately recognize. This is my usual color coding, so I know that my drums are green, that my bass is red, that my synths tend to be in this purplish kind of shade. So not a lot of tracks, 26 tracks, I was pretty economic with this beat. However, I think that there are a few things that might be grouped. Yeah, they're already grouped. Yeah, very minimalistic stuff, but I've tried to just work with the arrangement to create variation, to create change along the way. So let's have a quick listen to this. Yeah, from the top, and yeah, well, then we'll break down a few of the main elements that make this track. Okay. All right. Sorry, my mic was temporarily off. Anyway, as I was about to say, this I guess gives you a general idea. I've stopped right there, sort of like halfway through the track. Structure-wise, it kind of repeats itself in a way, with shorter, I suppose, verses. Although this is just instrumental music. There's no vocals other than some vocal chops and samples, but it's all instrumental based. This way, I already have my locators kind of like assigning where the main sections are. Essentially, there's section A. There's 4 sections of sort of 4 variations of that. So this is one thing that I've done in terms of arrangement. I was probably working or started working on, as before, as I said on other episodes, where we start working on like 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, and then flesh out from that, start working sort of like from the most intense part, like the most ecstatic part, the part that has more richness, that has more, essentially more tracks. As you can see here, the drop tends to be, again, I think the drops get progressively busier as the song develops, as the track develops. But again, very few layers. So I'm going to break down some of the main elements that I have going on here. So I guess it all revolves around 2 main parts, which is these chords. So this began to be, from what I remember, just a simple loop. So let me bypass all of my processing here. So it's just 2 very atmospheric, very vibey chords that I've then processed with a little bit of EQ. So essentially filtering out a lot of the low end, some dynamic EQ, controlling these mid-range frequencies here, and then a boost on the top mid frequencies to just give a bit more of presence. So that was like a tonal sculpting move there, if you will. Then I'm a huge fan of doing this. A lot of people use some plugins that do the so-called pumping effect, the 4 on the floor kind of. So this kind of effect, which I've done by adding 2 stock plugins from Ableton, LFO and Utility. Essentially, the way that this works is you map a particular parameter. So I've mapped the gain on my utility, and then I've locked it in with BPM, and it's going at a quarter note rate. So doing this kind of motion, which is, you know, what I was going for. And then there's a filter. That in this case is moving to not, so this is not locked in with BPM, so this is actually expressed in cycles per second, which is what, you know, this 2.2 kilohertz means. So it's at this rate per second. And again, it's just going, we can't really see what the movement here on this plugin, but it's going back and forth, kind of like taking away the top end, bringing it back, gives it a very sort of cool movement. And then I think this tremolator plugin, this is from a third-party company called Sound Toys. Love their plugins. So as you can see here, this little red dot here at the top means that this has been automated. So if I remember correctly, let me just bring the automation mode on, which by tapping A you get into that. You can also click here at the top. But as we can see, relating to this track, yeah, it only comes on here at this part, so there's a drop at that point. So there's actually 2 things happening. Again, because this kind of goes on for the whole track, it could sound repetitive. So I felt like at this point, 2 minutes and something into the track, I decided to not only transpose this. So here on the clip editor, I've bumped it up by 12 semitones, so which equals an octave. And then processing wise, this comes in and gives it a 16th note pumping effect as well. At the end of the chain, there's a bit of stereo width with wider. So this thing really makes it explode on the stereo field. And this is a really great plugin if you don't know about it. This is a freeware plugin. You can just get it from So if you type in Infected Mushroom wider, you will find this plugin very easy to download, completely free, completely legal. So if you don't have this in your plugin arsenal, make sure to get it, because this thing is a beauty. Also, you can decide which frequencies to not be affected by the width. So sometimes it's can be problematic, can lead to some issues. Infected Mushroom, yeah. Yeah, you can essentially just dial in the frequency that you don't want. So anything below that frequency will not be affected by the stereo width, and that's what we want here. So I've just took this up to 131 hertz, so everything below that is not being affected by the width. And then very easy to use, just a slider. You can add more or less stereo width to your sound. Very easy to use. It's a great thing. So yeah, that's all it was. So this is the main one, right? You can hear how it changes at that part of the track. And then, if I remember correctly, this chop here was something that I probably found in Ableton's stock library sounds. So the samples that come with Ableton, which are royalty free and great to use sometimes, I've just chucked this into a simpler, played around with the start and end of the sample, got to a point where I was happy with this. And the cool thing is, as soon as you import any audio into simpler, it essentially does what's called pitch tracking. So as you're playing on your keyboard, it will pitch it up or down depending on the note that you're playing on your keyboard. So I guess I just found like two notes that I liked. So, but I love using vocal chops. A very easy way to play with vocal chops is just dropping them into simpler and then playing them like an instrument. So no big secret there. That's all I've used. So I guess that this is the main sort of motif, I suppose. It goes to lower notes actually. And then there's another lead that comes in, so another main melody that I start introducing little by little from section A. It gets busier as the song develops, so I think for the verses is kind of like that, but then when we get to, say, the drop, kind of like a plucky melody. And this was created with another third-party virtual instrument called Serum, very popular synth these days. The preset is called Nothing Special, but sometimes, you know what? That's all you need. Something that's not special, just like doing or playing the role of a counter melody. So I guess that the way that the interplay between the vocal chops and this and especially on the verses, you kind of hear one after the other. So it's like melody, counter melody. So I think that is something that in any type of music production, so this relates more, I think, to the idea of just composing music, right? So when you have something which is your main riff, and there's something that comes and kind of shadows it. And I'm a huge fan of this concept, so I think I've applied it here, probably even without thinking about it, in theoretical terms. But I guess it works really well here. And then when you get to the drop, obviously all things get more complex, more dense, and then that's why there's a bit more of movement. But still, they're complementing each other really well. They're not, in this case, not playing in the gaps of each other, but reinforcing at specific moments. And playing a very rhythmic role as well, which is cool. Then in addition to that, in terms of, I'm going to start with my melodic / harmonic sounds. So I told you that this was kind of like the main Oh, there's a few bells and whistles. I mean, I did a few chops. This was just some audio editing that I've done. Can't remember exactly how I've achieved this, but probably I chopped this into smaller chunks and then did this and then consolidated it to just make it a bit neater. But it's a way of kind of, as we are going into the first drop, because there's a little stop at beat 1. It's something that I'm a huge fan of doing, so it kind of like takes away the kind of more predictable impact on the 1. You know that the beat is going to drop on the 1, but then there's a little bit of a hold, and that's enough to keep people like excited for then the beat coming back in on the 2. There's a sound effect that goes in there. Again, I think I didn't do anything special with this guy other than pitching it down, because the original was probably higher. So just pitched it down by 2 semitones to keep it in key. And then what else? Yeah, then there's a pad that comes in. This is just to reinforce the 2 main chords. Doing the same LFO trick, but even without this, from what I remember, yeah, I think. Let me just have this tracked arm. Let me just refresh my memory here in terms of chords. Yeah, so that's A minor and F sharp minor. So the serum patch itself, I think this was higher. So I'm just playing these 2 chords here, which is, yeah, A minor 7th and F sharp minor 7th. So just these 2 chords. So I guess this just gives a bit more of depth and kind of helps out with what we already have going on here. So this pad adds a sense of sparkle, I guess. That was the purpose of adding this other layer. Bit more depth, a bit more width as well. It's a very wide kind of patch here. So I think this probably also started from a preset, which I've then tweaked a few things. I guess the attack was quicker. I kind of made the attack a little bit slower, so there's a bit more of a gradual rise to this sound. And in terms of effects, I might have tweaked here. Probably this phaser seems like there's even a bit of automation there, so I probably dialed in a bit more of a phasey kind of sound, so it sounded a bit more psychedelic. So I guess that it helped add a bit more dimension to the sound as it came in. Guys, if you're joining this this live stream, make sure to let me know that you're here. Would love to have your thoughts. I mean, this is meant. I'm obviously kind of like taking apart all my decisions that I've done in this production, but you're welcome to, as I said, the idea is to wrap up this today. I'm not going to touch this track anymore after this episode. So whatever ideas you might have, you're welcome to suggest them. I'm all ears. Anyway, or eyes in this case, because I'll only be able to read you. But nonetheless, let's carry on. I think that the only thing that I haven't mentioned, yeah, there's a sample that also comes in gradually. You might have heard this before in other tracks. Let's see, it comes in here. It's from a very famous track, one of the most famous, most sampled tracks of all time. So this is kind of like my homage to that. Nothing but a bit of EQ, I guess, because this is chopped from the whole track. So I'm imagining that you would hear, yeah, you can even hear the drums. So I think to mitigate a little bit of the presence of the drums, I kind of filtered out all of the low end and also a little bit of the top end and focused this more on the mid range, which is where the vocals tend to have more energy. So that was just to amplify that. And there's some sends. I'm a huge fan of using sends. A lot of people nowadays just prefer to use or to dial in their effects on tracks. I think sends and returns are a very easy way of just adding effects very quickly. So you can have your favorite effects. Like here, I just have 2 returns. One with a reverb, one of my favorite reverbs ever. Is very simple to use, also from Sound Toys. Little plate, so very easy to use. You just set the decay time. When you have your effects on a return, you want them to be 100% wet, and then you can also dial in a low cut on your reverb, because sometimes adding more low end with the reverb just turns your sound, your overall kind of mix into sort of like a very muddy kind of mess. So I tend to filter out a little bit of the lows on most of my reverbs. Case dependent, obviously, but in this case I think I probably dialed in a lot of that low cut. So yeah, and then a delay, which again one of my favorite delays, which is H delay from Waves. So on an 8th note setting, and ping pong, so the repeats from the delay kind of go from left to right. And that's it. So I think I've added a little bit of both to this sound, as you can hear. So just that. So the first decision that I'm gonna take, that I almost kind of forgot that I had this sound here. It's a little bit tucked in the mix. It's not meant to be too much in the forefront, but I think I can just bump it up a few dB. And I think that it could also be fun just for the last drop, or for most of the drops, to have kind of the ooh yeah, kind of like go from left to right. So instead of having them in the center, having them go to either side. So I'm just going to tap A to go into automation mode. And this is the cool thing about Ableton, is you click on the parameter that you want to affect on either a plugin or here on the track header, and it shows the lane that's corresponding to that. So here, what I want to affect is the panning. So I just click here on the track panner, and what I'm going to do is just like grab this, take this, make this hard. Actually, you know what? This whole chunk hard left, and then this bit hard right. So this is going to do essentially, actually I want the opposite. So this is going to be hard, this is hard left, and this is hard right. Okay, cool. So now, and then this goes back to, so this could be a little bit, you know, if we do it this way around, like doing every single one, it's going to be a little bit tedious. But the cool thing is we can, you know, say do two bars, and then we can just copy and paste. So, or actually, sorry, Command D for duplicate, and we'll duplicate all of this. So let's see if this is right. Yeah, looks good. So we can just do this, and duplicated the whole thing. Okay, digging that. Do you know what? I think I might also have this happen not on the verses, but just on the drop. So again, giving a little bit of variation to this sound. In this case, I'll just need the first half, because this last drop is longer. And now I'm going to paste it here. Sorry, move my playhead here, and there we go. Okay, simple thing, but I guess that makes it come to life a little bit more. And maybe subconsciously, this is something that gives us the impression of things happening in the stereo field. And that's one of the things that you want from a listener's experience, is to have things that, even if you're not noticing them, but that keep changing over time. That's one of the main concepts in good music production, is that it keeps being interesting and appealing over time. Right, that's all there is to say, I guess, about that. I think I've duplicated, this is a very simple thing that I've done here. I've just duplicated my main sample and pitched it up and added a tremolator, which is making the sound sort of pulsate in a 16th note way. So I guess that this is, do you know what, you can hardly hear this, so I guess that this could also be a little bit louder. And I'm thinking that maybe this is too soon to have it come in. I just want this like for the very last run to come in, so. Right, and also, I think I'm going to make this. I'm going to go back into automation to create a little fade in, if you will. So I'm going to have it start kind of like creep in on you very quietly, and then maybe start a little bit louder. Cool, yeah. Okay, that's someone talked about like having a second bass line, and that's one of the things that actually it's a very good point that that has been made there, because I love the bass line. It's very simple, and so let's move on to like, I guess that we're done with this, so we're ready to move on to the bass line. So again, my main bass is kind of this pattern. This is one thing that never ceases to amaze me about bass sounds, is that this sound doesn't sound particularly great. It sounds very kind of buzzy and distorted, doesn't sound like it's a great bass sound, but it really works with the track. And yeah, so let's look into it. So again, it's another Serum patch. Was really excited about Serum this day, apparently. I don't always use it that much, but again, only a little bit of width and sidechain compression. So this is duck, making the bass duck whenever the kick comes in. But yeah, it's kind of always around. I mean, it kind of builds up. It starts being a little bit simpler. So I guess that I've started with creating the more complex bass line, and then I just played the delete game that I always do and start deleting a few notes, make it sparse. But it's always those two same notes, so it's a little bit boring. I think I have to add a bit more of depth in the drop. I've added a Reese bass, so very popular, different style of bass. And when we did the episode on bass sound, so if you haven't watched that one, you can go back to our YouTube page and watch it there, because it's very interesting. Because I talked about like some classic bass sounds, and Reese bass is another one of those. Can't go wrong with a Reese bass when you want this very kind of ominous. I mean, it's a sort of very variable sound in the sense that if you have the filter open, it sounds very aggressive, and this way it just sounds very menacing. That's how I would put it, I guess. So it's very mysterious, very eerie. I love this type of bass. So this kind of playing the longer notes in combination with the more staccato, more choppy notes, and this first bass is a little bit more mono, a little bit more in the center, and the bottom one super wide. And I think it's giving us a little bit more of that sense of depth that you kind of want when a drop comes in. Sometimes it's more felt than heard. But you can immediately tell as soon as if you guys are watching this on your phone, maybe this is going to be hard to notice. But if you listen to this on headphones, this really makes gives it a different atmosphere as soon as it comes in, and especially when I mute it. World of a difference. But that said, it does get a little bit old after a while. I do a few breaks, so when we get into the second bit here, there's a bit of filtering going on the drums. I think I've automated that on the group itself. Again, let me tell you about while we're on that, this is another free plugin by Arturia. I'm a huge fan of freeware stuff, as you can tell by now. But good free plugins, right? So you have some not so good ones out there. But this is pristine. This is a really cool filter that emulates the MS-20 synth filter. So a classic synth that had a very characterful and very saturated, so you can actually here you can kind of play around with how much drive you want on the filter. So it's a bit gritty, but I really like that about it. So it comes in here, but again, it does create a little bit of a change at this point. But we're always dealing with the same bass line and the same progression. So it's electronic music, so sometimes all you need is, 2 chords, it's fine, or even 1 sometimes. But yeah, it would be good to have something that would change at some point. So I'm thinking that maybe this drop here in the middle. So my solution was to get rid of the bouncy bass line and just have the rees, which is not bad. But I wonder if we can maybe play around with, because it was suggested by someone here, and what I'm going to do is just mute this and maybe even give a break to these chords and see what we can come up with. Even maybe just get rid of everything that is melodic and see what I can come up with. So let me just bring this back. So yeah, maybe we can move this up a little bit. So we're essentially always playing between A and F sharp, right? Maybe going up to C could be cool. So just doing very simple C, D, and that's better. Maybe going down to B gives it a bit more tension instead of resolving to, again, to the A, which is all, again, the predictable note that was already in the progression. So maybe keeping this and then maybe at the end moving it up to G, which would kind of really suggest that the next one, because kind of like follows the note before. When you're going up the scale, then it's like just very sensitive to going back to the main progression, which would start on A. So maybe that could be cool. Let me just record that quickly, see if that makes any sense. Yeah, maybe that could be cool. I don't know. In the interest of time, what I'm going to do is just keep this idea. I think I'll just need to give this a quick quantize. And then let's see if we can do something with these chords. So you might, I'm going to still use these, but play around with chopping them up. So let's see. So I'm gonna duplicate this. And then play around with transposing. Yeah, maybe that could be cool. And copy this across. So I'm going semitone by semitone. I'm just stressing my ears here because I'm not really sure what's going to fit. But because this might prove to be a little bit tricky because there's a lot of modulations occurring. So here's what I'm going to do. Instead of doing this, I'm just going to give this bit a break. And I'm going to use one of the instruments that I had here already, so the pad sound, and create these chords very quickly again. So I guess that we're playing with... So that would be C major, maybe major 7th. Yeah, so that would be it. Yeah, I think I'm just going to do those two main chords. There's some transition notes, but I guess the main chords are C major 7th and B minor 7th. Yeah, I'm going to go with those two. Yeah. Sorry, I'll give myself a bit of a count in. Yeah, just let it ring. I guess that's good enough. I don't always quantize things too intensely, but I guess here, again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to do that to make things a little bit tighter. Copy this across to here, because I guess this one was a little bit better executed. Or maybe not. Oh yeah, so it starts here, actually. Let's see. Maybe also trim out this last beat here of the bass. Yeah, cool. Like that. And I'm thinking that I want this re-space to have a bit more movement. So what I'm going to quickly do is just find an arpeggiator to add to this sound. And I'm going to have it off by default because I want to automate this in just for this part. Instead of creating a new track, I'm just going to automate the on button here. And then it's going to go off again. And I wonder if we can also I'm going to also automate this filter, which is essentially taking away a lot of the top end on this sound. So again, filter on 8 on and off. That's the automatable parameter, so it's off by default. I'm just going to come here and have it go off temporarily, and I'm also going to play around with the filter cut off on this synth, which is one of the macros. I'm going to start with it a little bit more closed. Okay, cool. So something like that, I guess that could be cool. going to automate one last thing. At the end of this sound, there's another macro here that's mapped to reverb. So to make this kind of disappear, I'm going to add more reverb. So it kind of gives us the illusion that the sound is kind of like taking off, right? It's going further away from us. So from this part here, I'm going to make that the reverb just be exaggerated. Yeah, that's cool. And I now feel like in comparison, this bass needs to be a little bit louder, so the low end kind of matches when it comes back in. Cool, happy with that. Yeah, hope you guys like that. Or I mean, we're a very simple solution, but we have to make do with 1 hour. That's what we're given, so we're gonna make it work. That's one other thing that's a really big help when it comes to finishing a track, is having a deadline. Even if you don't have one, if you're not running against the clock, sometimes just a way to, you know, get it over with. Okay, let's move on to another production. This track is already finished, so let's imagine, you know, give yourself the challenge of, okay, I have 1 hour to finish this. So whatever comes out after 1 hour, it's done. Okay, so I know that's easier said than done, but yeah, I think it's a really good strategy. I sometimes apply that to myself, even if, you know, the release is only going to be in a month's time. It's better to have it finished, because you don't want, you know, to do last minute things when you actually want to release things, or you have, you know, if you have a label and you have the label knocking at your door and you just want to have things ready and you're not really happy with the result, it's better to give yourself some leeway. Anyway, going back into Ableton, I'm not going to go too deep into the drums. We're going to do a just very quick run through, because it's just basic house drums. What does that mean? 4 on the floor kick, can't go wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 different claps. Actually, a clap and a snare. Don't know where I found these samples. Probably in my sample library, which is way bigger than it should be. And then, yeah, nothing special in terms of processing. Actually, I'm thinking now maybe... No, I do like the balance between them. They're slightly panned apart from each other, so there's a bit of width. And then there's 2 sets of hats. I remember this was a collage of different samples, so instead of having just the same hat doing 1, 2, 3, 4, what's happening is I have 3 different samples that I've then pasted together, merged together. There's an open one there, and then there's a hat loop that comes in, guess what, at the drop, just to give this a bit more. And there's actually a 3rd hat loop. Can't go wrong with 909 hats. And a loop. I love like glitchy loops. I love adding a bit of glitchiness every now and again. So this has a bit of apparently EQ, just filtering the lows, compression to keep it together, and a filter. So one thing that I'm noticing, maybe, yeah, these are very sort of dark. I don't mind that, but maybe I'm just going to very quickly EQ them just to bring out a tiny bit more of brightness to them. So if you're new to EQ, essentially you just kind of like go around the frequency range. I mean, this is streamlining it a lot, but essentially this is the frequency range going from lows, mids, and highs. So you find the kind of the energy that you want to either boost or remove, and here we are finding, yeah, just a bit of that top end sizzle. And this is done in context, obviously, because it's very easy to get fooled by how things sound when isolated. I think I just wanted a little bit of that, and I'm happy. And then yeah, other than that, kicks sounding very prominent. I like that. I think there's a bit of processing on the drums as well. Gotta love drum bus. I mean, this really... Notice the difference that this guy does on my... So this is applied to the drum group. So I'm not applying this to the individual tracks. Sometimes if you want to do things like what I did there, you know, with this hat, 909 hats that I boosted up a little bit of the top end. But here I'm adding a bit of two types of saturation. So there's a bit of overdrive and a bit of crunch. A bit of transient designer to just give a bit more accent to the attack of sounds, and boom, this thing is amazing. Adds a bit more of thump to your sound, so you can really dial in the frequency that you want. It's kind of like a sub-harmonic generator. Actually, I'm going to just check this in context, whether I want to add a bit more of this or not. I think it was around 30%. Oh yeah, I do want more of that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now I have a very sort of thumpy bass drum, so I'm happy with that. There is a question that someone says, is there such a thing as a sample library that's too big? I mean, good question. I mean, sometimes, you know what? The thing is, I tend to gravitate to my go-tos. Whenever I like a sound, I put it on, you know, I kind of label it or color it, so I know that I'll go back to it. Sometimes I want to find a new sound, but I see myself sort of gravitating towards the same ones or similar ones, or sound like the 909 hat. You can't go wrong. It's a classic. You know, it's like picking up a Fender guitar. It always has that sound. Do you know what I mean? Because you can always manipulate. There's so many things. I'm a huge fan of like creatively mangling your sound. There's so many things that we can do just with the stock tools and features that Ableton has, plus all the plugins that are out there. You can really morph your sound. So sometimes, you know, to me, this is a matter of like, you know, production philosophy. I would rather have a sounds that I trust, or have more limited sounds that I know how they sound like, and then I can, you know, then focus on giving them character through manipulation. But again, that's maybe like someone who is in a way a sound designer as well. But that's my approach. And maybe people just like, okay, so I want a trap hat drum loop, 130 BPM, and I know where to find it. Or let me go through a few of these. There's a lot of platforms out there that you can just like type in the type of sound that you want, and you find it, and it works. It works great. So nothing against that. Myself, I tend to prefer, you know, just giving life to my sounds and character by running them through all sorts of processes. But sometimes, you know, you just want a piano sound and that's it. Sometimes you just want, you know, an open hi-hat and like an 808 bass sound, and that's all you want. Anyway, we have 10 minutes to go, so we're gonna move into mastering real quick. So this hasn't been mastered. This has just been mixed. Then a few tweaks and that sense. So I'm gonna have 10 minutes to finish the master. As you can see here on my main channel, so this is where all my sounds are ultimately routed to, have nothing going on. So as I am a professional, as you can see here, level wise, I'm not running into the red. I'm giving myself some headroom, which is something which is advisable to do, right? So keeping my peaks roughly here so I can have a bit more. Sorry, there's something that happened. I can see that the reverb, oh yeah, I forgot to then automate it back down. That's why I was hearing a lot of reverb on this reed space that wasn't supposed to be there. But I digress. Moving on to the mastering stage. Here's what I'm going to be, not lazy, but hear me out. First thing that I'm going to do on my chain, on my master chain, is to bring in my trusty Ozone. I'm still rocking Ozone 9, so I know that there's more recent versions out there, but this is the one that I bought and I haven't updated yet. But it already has something which is called a Master Assistant, which is AI based. So it's not going to make a great master, but at least it's going to give us some hints of what can be done. So I tend to use this a lot to just kickstart my mastering process. So again, what you do is you just hit Master Assistant. I'm going to go for intensity high, modern, and destination CD, only because this is just in terms of like loudness targets. I'm going to go and go for the loudest, which would be CD. I think this has been updated in more recent versions of Isotope's Ozone. So it's waiting for us to play audio, so I'm just going to play the louder section, which is the drop. Okay, I'll accept that, and I'm going to look at what Ozone has decided to do, and I'm going to now tweak all these things, because there's Ozone is pretty much like a one-stop shop for mastering. So it has equalizers, compressors, dynamic EQs, your maximizers, everything. So I'm going to now reevaluate what has been done here. So there's a lot of low end that was taken away, or like 1 dB. Probably that was too much bass. So I'm just trusting my ears to change a little bit of these EQ moves. So again, with this high shelf, which is essentially just bringing a bit more of brightness and air to our mix, just changing the point where this was and maybe having a little bit less, which sounds a little bit better to my ears. It has bypass dynamics, so this is a multi-band compressor, so it's a compressor that kind of like compresses the different bands in a different way. So I think I would much prefer doing this than the EQ. So then taking away completely, I prefer to control my low end dynamically. So this means that only when the low end becomes excessive, and this is mostly dominated by the kick drum, there's a bit of reduction occurring here. And we can create up to 4 different bands. These crossovers are movable. So if we wanted to, say, control our low mids, again, we're doing just minimal things here. I feel like the top end sometimes also jumps out a little bit, so I'm also going to add a bit of compression to the top end. Again, mostly dictated by things like cymbals, hi-hats, crashes. Dynamic EQ, this is one of the things that I absolutely like about the AI part of it, because it kind of recognizes certain resonances that are too resonant, and it kind of like just makes them duck whenever they become too intense. So I mostly tend to agree. I sometimes play around with the thresholds if I want more or less. Again, top end. Better to spread this. So the top end control, I'm spreading kind of like the reduction between the multiband compression and the dynamic EQ. So instead of like having one do like a reduction of say 4 dB, which would be too aggressive, I'm spreading this between 2 different agents. To me, that sounds a little bit less harsh and more transparent. Lastly, the maximizer here. First of all, set the ceiling to -0.2. And here again, we're going to use a technique that I tend to like to use, which is instead of using a maximizer to try to get the most loudness. So this way we're doing like what? not too much, but like say roughly we're knocking off from the peaks minus 1, minus 2. Maybe I can up this a little bit more and add another limiter. So I'm going to use one of my favorite limiters. How much time do we have? 3 minutes roughly. Okay, so we still have enough time for another limiter. So yeah, let's stack them up. I have here on where did I save that? Anyway, let's just check loudness wise how we're doing in terms of target. Okay, minus 10. It's already considerably loud, but I guess we can have it a little bit louder even. So let me think. What's the name of that thing? And I think I have it under dynamics. So this is my custom plugin menu. Got standard clip. I love this guy. This guy's really cool for maybe do you know what? I'll actually do this before ozone. So I'll try to achieve a little bit of clipping before. Let me try Soft Clip Pro. Maybe a bit too crunchy already. Gonna. Getting a bit more presence with this. I think we've gained probably like 1 dB of loudness. Let's see in the loudness meter now. Okay, so I'm gonna so my last step here. Let me just check one thing here. Okay, I'm gonna let you in on another secret. I mean, it's no secret by now, but this is a really game changer for me. Plugin that I bought recently. This is a third limiter in a way, but also has some built-in EQ and some harmonic enhancement. This is kind of like the dark magic kind of part of this, but it's amazing. So let's see if this does come in and give me yet a little bit more loudness in general. A bit too crunchy, so I'm gonna dial back on the input level. So this is a very competitive level right now. Maybe a little bit too crunchy. If I had a bit more time, maybe I would tweak this a bit more. But I guess I'm happy with this. I'm just gonna look at one last analyzer. This is the God particle. This is I can't remember the name of the company, but definitely this is worth looking into. Yeah, because you also have. I mean, if you want to balance your just lows, highs, and mids, very simple to use. There's a built-in limiter, you can bypass it if you want. So we're dividing kind of the limiting between 3 different limiters. So instead of having one, say, like knocking off 4 dB, this one is knocking off like 1. This is knocking off, again, this other limiter. Yeah, there's like 1 dB being reduced across 3 different limiters. And I feel like that has a more natural result. More transparent than having one trying to work a lot. So yeah, one last thing before we go. I also rely heavily, I mean not heavily, trust my ears first and foremost, but tonal balance again by Isotope, just to give me a rough notion of where my levels are divided by ranges. So this is indicating that I have way too much low end. So that is probably true. Ozone tried to tell me that. Again, I'm using headphones that I'm not really used to. Maybe these lack a little bit of lows. Then that's why I'm maybe compensating for the low end. So here, even when bypassing the bass, it's still too much low end. So I probably got too carried away with this boom that I've added here. Let me just dial down just to wrap this up. Maybe. Went back to the mix, because sometimes you can't really do everything in mastering. So the way that this works is whenever this little line is towards the center, it indicates that that is roughly where it needs to be. There's different profiles for different types of music. Tend to go with bass heavy for most of the music that I make. So yeah, and that's it. So we'll now be ready to export. So yeah, that will be it. So this is just like, then you gotta just get to a point where you just hit export, and then maybe have a listen to it in in the car, or on your way to work, or on your way to on your daily commute. Maybe just taking your eyes off the screen a little bit, and then you'll know for sure that it's done. Okay, so hope these strategies have given you a bit of perspective on what to do when finishing a track. And yeah, in 2 weeks time we'll have another episode. Do let us know what you want for us to cover. As I said, this is meant to be a dynamic and interactive platform where you guys can suggest things for us to cover here. So yeah, we're looking forward for your DMs or your emails, whichever way you have to reach out. ProDJ, just reach us out and let us know what you want to see in the upcoming episodes. Till then, take care, guys. It was a pleasure.